Right. So today, I just wanted to take the time, take a moment. We've been talking about mental health all month. We've been putting up posts. Um, I have a special guest today. Her name is Tangela. We go way back. We go back to what college.
My very
She
first
is.
party I went to. Sorry.
Yep, absolutely. So we know each other very well, and of course, we got the brand to be in the building. But we're going to be talking about a very heavy topic today. This topic is suicidal ideation. Um, Coach King is ignorant to suicidal ideation. My expertise is exercise, health, and fitness in that realm. So I decided to bring some experts on board with me, some advocates for mental health and specifically suicidal ideation. Brittany has hands-on experience, and so does Tangela. So I believe they're very credible, very viable source. This is such a great topic, especially during this month, to cover more specifically because everybody, I believe, has been impacted in some aspect by suicidal ideation. We all know somebody who either has tried to bodily self harm themselves, or we've dealt with a friend that has called us and said, "Hey, man, I don't want to live anymore." We all have those stories. I just wanted to, and we just wanted to just make it aware, make you more aware as the viewer as to what suicidal ideation is and what can we do if you know you have a family member, a church buddy, a friend, a coworker, or just somebody random on the street. What can we do to help this individual in the moment? So the reason why this is brought up is because yes, there are hotlines, but sometimes hotlines are just referral sources. So we want to be frontline advocates for this particular topic because we want to be able to save a life. So let's get to the nitty gritty. um, like I said, I am completely ignorant to suicidal ideation. When it was brought to me as a healthcare delivery uh, topic, I was kind of like, what is it? I, didn't, I saw the word ideation. I said, what does ideation mean? I had to Google it. So that's how ignorant I was to this entire topic. So um, my first question is suicide ideation. What is it?
Hmm. Suicidal ideation. I mean, it is quite literally, right? Like thoughts, plans, intentions of killing yourself. You know, uh, if you look up, if you Google it, right, it'll say something along the lines of like the act or an instance of taking one's own life voluntarily and intentionally, right? And that's suicide. Um, and so I know we'll get further into it, but I always think of like I changed it to ideation to really kind of consider like even those like vague thoughts. So I had to learn that like sometimes saying like, oh, I just wish I wasn't here anymore
Mm, it's good.
is
Mm,
suicidal ideation.
yeah.
Well, yeah,
Sorry.
please,
Yeah.
Brittany.
No, I think it's important to understand that it's a symptom of a bigger underlying issue, which is depression. It's and a lot of people think that the suicidal ideation is the actual problem, but it's just a simple, or it's a symptom.
Wow. Okay.
Yep.
So really suicidal ideations or thoughts um, come in because of our mental health. So we have to do a self check and see where we are. And then is it something that once we do that self check, we don't like what we find? Is that, would that be how you could say, like, from a person maybe experiencing a suicidal ideation? Is it that they don't like what they find, or is it something like, Tangela, could you help me, like, maybe paint that a little bit, like, for our viewers or whoever's watching, like, because I'm thinking about it from a standpoint of I'm having these, like, something in my life is happening, an outside or external influence, or maybe something's happened traumatically to me, and I can't get away from what has happened. And so I go internal and I say, I can't do it. Like, this is just too much for me. Like, can you elaborate on that for me?
Yeah. And I think Brittany summed it up really beautifully in talking about the symptoms. And so when it comes to suicide or suicidal ideation, like a lot of the language is around risk factors for suicide. And so there are so many risk factors. So some individuals may do that self-check where they're sitting down with themselves or reflecting on things, whether it was a loss or I don't know, like maybe they're financially struggling, whatever it might be. And so, yeah, they might do that self-check, but maybe it's not as like intentional or conscious either. There's a lot of unconscious, like automatic, like survival responses that people have to stress that kind of can impact that. So risk factors could be that a person does have some sort of psychiatric disorder, like a mood disorder, like such as depression or anxiety or substance use or personality disorders, or getting into, maybe they have psychosis. So like there's that kind of risk factor that could just that's a world in which unfortunately they exist and live and survive in. There could also be like that biological factor. So, when people are talking about depression, right, it's researchers said that it's like the function of your serotonin levels, right? So that biological imbalance, but also like family history, right? Genetics.
Okay.
Whether that would like they have family members who in the past have attempted or completed suicide, also linking that psychiatric disorder. But like think about people who have like chronic medical issues or medical illnesses where they're living with chronic constant pain, right? If you are, or you're immobile or you're disabled, that kind of life, like all of us are able-bodied here. So like getting up and walking to the room, like we might notice in our age some differences, but like we have not known a life consciously, right, where we couldn't walk.
Yeah,
and,
that's true.
And we're all aging. And something I think a lot about is like our parents are aging. My dad is disabled. He has very limited mobility and ability to walk on top of lots of medical issues. And like this is a Black man who like used to run the streets, like play basketball, like all these things, and and his strength is important. And like you're telling me like I can't move or walk the way that I used to, I can't run, and I have to like go slow, like that shifts your mind. It's hard to accept that new reality, and that emotionally impacts you. So like that's why screening is important. And then like I want to also uplift, like if you have had a history of like trauma, if you're child abuse, sexual assault, domestic violence, like that is also something that, again, that emotional, mental pain and sometimes physical can lead you to that, again, symptoms. So I hope all that makes sense. I'm sure you'll ask if you have questions.
Brittany, do you have anything you want to add to this? As to what you said, I got so much that went through my head personally. But Brittany, do you have anything that you want to add?
I do like so one of my big things, and you did it like naturally, Tan, is when people say they committed suicide, it condemns them. So we typically say, they died by suicide, or she said completed. So that, I mean, it's very important in terms of using like language and things around it. But from my personal experience, I do want to like just put a blanket statement out there that I am speaking like solely from me, my perspective. Like, I don't want to summarize or lump everyone's experience because everyone is different. But my personal experience and my personal struggle with it, it did come from a space of feeling inadequate, and inadequacy, and really not knowing who I was as a person. So again, all of that lumped together, it's a symptom of something bigger, right? The bigger picture. So, I think you did a great job of explaining that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Angela, yes, you did a wonderful job. Wonderful. That was a wonderful explanation, because what it did for me as the ignorant person in the room is it let me see that life brings a lot of those factors to me, and my response to that is what this is all about. How do I respond? What are my thoughts? A lot of things that happen to me, uh, it happens to you, and then you internalize it. But there's so many things that life throws at you at one time.
Mhm.
And so it's kind of like, let's get into the stigma. So, like, for me, when life comes up at me, I tend to go into a shell.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And that's where it seems like it would be the most dangerous, because I'm isolating, I'm not talking to people, and I could see where these negative thoughts or the thoughts of my situation can weigh me down. So I think I want to just kind of transition into, just kind of talking about going into your shell, the dangers of going into a shelled state in isolation, when life is, hitting you. What what can we do when we are going through some type of traumatic event? Like, something happens to us, right? Like an outside force, like we lose a job, we're going through a transition, we lost a spouse, uh, the stock market crashes, we lose a business. Um, I think there's a lot of things that happen. But then there's also the person that suffers in silence. Um, I know a person, it was a young child. He was in middle school and actually killed himself. Um, and nobody knew that he even had the thoughts. That's what I mean by this internal situation. So I think the voice that I'm speaking from is somebody who is debating, suicide right now in this moment as we talk. What should they do? Like, how can we reach them, and then how can they create their voice to actually say something? Brittany, I don't know, maybe what motivated you to get help? This is the best question. Like, how do we motivate people to get help? And then, like, what really ultimately drove you to find help in the situation?
I think it was a very difficult decision to make. They say that suicide ultimately is a, it's gonna kick me out. Hold that thought.
I'm gonna stop recording.
Okay. So I believe that the best way to describe it is that it's a very, like, suicide is ultimately like a very private decision that you make after a very, like, private struggle. And I think what did it for me was, like, my proximity to what I thought was help in the moment, like my first experience with it. I was, was at the wayside, um, good old CMU. Um, uh, so I was outside, and CMU, the police station is right there, and I'm like, okay, I can make a choice to either go back to my dorm room, or there's there what I thought was help. And I guess for me, I'm like, this isn't, this isn't normal. Like, it's not normal. I shouldn't feel like this. Like something's wrong. And I'm tired of just like holding it. So I just really, like, for me, it was like, I just wanted to, like, I want it out. You know what I'm saying? It has to come out. So I had to talk to someone. So I went where I felt that it should be safe for me.
Yeah. Brittany, I got a secondary question. So when you said it has to come out, when you say that, were you at that point of actually going through with the thoughts at that point, or what what do you mean by that? Can you expound on it has to come out? I just want to kind of
Sure.
elaborate on that.
Sure. So, that internal voice that you have, that's just like, you'd be better off up there. I was actually like, it was dark. Everyone else was in the partying, and I'm outside, sitting on the ground, looking up at the sky, like crying. And, I think what scared me the most was like, okay, in theory, like, just not to get all super religious, but I was like, okay, um, I don't know that what up there is better necessarily than what's down here. So I was in that conflicting space of, like, is it better up there? You know what I'm saying? I had plans, I had intent, but I'm like, I don't really know. There was that fear of, I don't really know what's up there. And if it truly is better than what's down here. Um,
Mhm.
so it was my own voice in the back of my head, and I'm like, okay, I have to talk to somebody. Like, I need. So when I say it had to come out, I'm like, I want somebody to listen and tell me that I'm not crazy.
Yeah, and so I'm trying to. So what made you make the choice to like, so at that moment, why didn't you just go down that path when you think about this? What what was like, I'm getting help? Like, was it divine intervention? Was it like, because you made a choice? You see what I'm saying? Why would you make that specific choice in that moment? What was it? Was it grandma? Was it mom? Was it, like some people have these things that they just make that choice. What made you make that choice?
I would have to say it was divine intervention, because in that moment where you're questioning, faith and, God and spirituality, I I felt a sense of warmth and comfort, like someone else was there, even though everyone else was inside the party. Like, I was outside by myself. But I felt a sense of comfort in that moment, like it was going to be okay. I can't describe it. Um, but I would say it was divine intervention.
You chose life.
Mhm.
That's so beautiful. So let's pivot. We're gonna go into, so I'm disgruntled because your friends at the party should have seen this.
Understood.
They should have. They should have. The people around you that knew you the most, or the closest people to you, not shaming them who did go with you and they're now seeing this video. But I think this is part of the societal issues that we have when it comes to, suicide. And this is like a prevention type conversation as well. Like, we're going to transition over because there has to be some warning signs. There has to be something, um, that we can see and that we can do as friends and as people. And we're built for relationship. Like, we are literally built to communicate with one another. So, Tangela, I'm gonna pick on you. What are some of the warning signs that 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 we can, just have like practical evidential, like what can we see with people who are maybe looking to do self-harm? Like, what are some of the warning signs?
Be right back, guys.
Okay. Um, so one, I just have to say, I know I'm gonna have a lot more grace for Brittany's friends, because as we talk about warning signs, like, I am a licensed therapist. Like I do advocacy. I've worked in like the emergency room. I know how to do assessments. I've had training and everything. And yet I still am not 100% a great emotional support for friends, or sometimes I don't like know what to do or how to support, and still trying to figure out and navigate that. So like I just want to kind of like empathize and kind of, we sometimes will get really fired up, myself included, and be like, they should have did this and they should have did that and they should have known this. And it's like sometimes and you just don't know what to do, and it's hard, and like we weren't like not trained, like we didn't learn these skills growing up of how to do that. Like people choose to go to school to learn how to do this and still have learning to do. And so this one, I was just saying, like have some grace and empathy for some of your friends, but I think you heard that anyway. Sorry, y'all got off on that, but let's talk about warning signs.
By the way, we are all Brittany's friends, so we're all guilty.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Just so you guys know.
Yeah,
that. Like,
I mean that's also why I said that. I was like,
I was talking to myself. Like, why didn't I know that she like?
I was like, oh, listen. I'm trying to be kinder to myself, and I was thinking about that, and I'm like, yeah, all the times that I saw Brittany and probably never spoke, but just was like,
Hey.
did a little weird smile, hey girl, and then like I don't know, like what would that look like, right? We get in our heads and kind of make it about us, and remembering like we're a community. So so grateful to be here, so grateful that you are here. But so talking about warning signs, so first things first, like Mike, you had hit one of the behaviors of that's elicits a warning sign, which was like that isolation. And I will tell you all this, yes, I'm trained, I'm skilled in this, but I'm also a human, and like I'm not removed from any of these. Like I was looking at this and I was like, oh man, okay, we're gonna have this conversation. You're gonna have to out yourself a little bit, but that's okay. Being transparent and vulnerable is important, because like we all battle this in some way. So right, like we think of warning signs of like suicidal ideation. So it's like there's emotions, there's thoughts, and there's behaviors. And then there's like another piece. And so one, like if someone actually verbalizes, right, I want to end my life, right? Like I will never forget, like my second year in college, my roommate at the time very openly, was having a very difficult time, and expressed like wanting to kill herself. And, I'd known about a previous attempt. I had known about thoughts, and, respected their privacy, but also was checking in, trying to give them resources. And so like eventually like had to call in all everybody, reinforcement, to try to, help this person. And so like knowing those warning signs, seeing them and trying to intervene is one thing. But like the biggest thing that I've learned in my own personal experience and just work was like also people have to want the help. And there's only so much you can do. But so someone can say like outrightly, I want to end my life, or they can talk like vaguely, or in another way of like, oh, there's no point, everything's pointless, worthless, there's no reason to live. They can talk about feeling like or thinking that they're a burden to other people, talking about being trapped, or they're just expressing like I am in so much pain, whatever kind of pain that could be. But then comes the other piece. And this is where in college, I think of like, of course, we're going to miss this piece in the behavior, because this is a socialized norm. A lot of this stuff is like alcohol and drug use, not sleeping, right? Like college, in order to be successful, for I think what we learned is, or emulated, was like, we don't sleep. Like we're about accomplishing these goals, about making this money, setting us up for the future. Sleep can happen when I'm dead, right? Recklessness. Like, how many folks do we know, and how many times can we reflect on our own behaviors in college or even now of like being really reckless? Like,
Mm,
0 to 100, and it's like, woo, this right? Like, I can think of myself of like all the reckless things I do. I'm like, and I know in hindsight, like this is harmful to you. But
hmm
like, how do you call someone out on that, right? Withdrawal. Oh, listen, my friends have accepted this, and I'm still working out of this. Is I'm out. Withdraw, isolate, shut down. You won't see me and you won't hear from me for who knows, eons. That's a warning sign. And that's something sometimes we have to navigate with people and know when too long it's been too long. So like I have some friends who are like accountable to me to be like, okay, so I know you need a lot of space and you need a lot of time alone, but I also know that you isolate when you're not doing good. So they're giving me an opportunity to be honest or lie, right? Like, I'm checking in, friend. Like, are you okay? I don't really think you're okay. I'm noticing this.
hmm
But and those are the little subtle things that like we can notice. But like, what do we say about like leaning in? Because someone could have a very strong
hmm
reaction, go off on you. That's a strong, anyway, lots of different ways to navigate that. And it can be hard. People can also give things away. So like just outright, like, so I see your eyes.
Whoa, I didn't
Yeah.
even realize that.
Yeah. So if you reflect back on some movies, like I can't think of one specifically, but I think of like I'm a Criminal Minds like fanatic. And so I think of an episode where I think it's like the character JJ is talking about her sister dying by suicide, and she gave away a necklace. She left a necklace to her sister who died. And she gave this necklace away, and so she was kind of like investigating the case. And long story short, she was like, well, if somebody was actually going to do this, giving away this item of importance is a sign of concern, because you don't want to just give this thing away because so it's not just like some random thing. It's not like, oh, I've had this for like whatever, I got it from a gift, here you can have that. That's not a warning sign. It's something meaningful and valuable. um
Mm,
and then of course like actively searching for ways to do it, noticing maybe that they're drinking a lot more and they're using pills a lot more. So those sort of things. And then of course like that mood, so when we're talking about like mental health disorders or psychiatric disorders of having depression, but also like complete apathy. Like if someone just doesn't give give a fuck about anything, that
Mhm.
that's cause for concern. Brittany, do you have something to say about that?
That was me. I stopped caring.
Yeah.
I stopped caring. I stopped going to class. I stopped eating. Um, yeah, I didn't care about anything.
wow.
Mhm.
Oh my goodness. I gotta. This is where that issue of, or this is where self-harm comes into play, and we don't realize that the isolation that we have, we self-harm. Like I remember, that's why I would drink heavily. A lot of times, which you guys know, I was a closet alcoholic.
Yeah.
Like I remember going and just abusing it, like by myself.
Yeah.
Like I remember just going out to get a drink just to get a drink. It just didn't. And for me, I'm sober now, but like for me, I didn't realize that that was self-harming.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It just made me more isolated, made me more whatever. But it's kind of interesting how I fell into it because it was such a social norm
Mhm.
to self-harm. What does that tell you about society? That means that I mean, we have to clean this up. Like we just have to clean that up because I mean, to I got to the point where I could not be in a social setting without having a drink.
That
Yeah.
Like,
that
and then like certain people I couldn't be around without drinking. And then once I drink, oh, now I can be around these people. And then when I go home, it's like I'm empty. I'm empty. So then in order to be around the people I want to be around, all right, let's go get a beer. Let's go. I mean, and it wasn't just a beer. I was slamming fifths just to be around people. Like Brittany talked about the wayside. Oh no, let me go get a underage drinking. Oh, I needed to be, because it really wasn't my scene. I'm a church boy. Like I go to church and I go to Bible study and I learn all this stuff. That's me. But in order to be around people, and so I wouldn't isolate myself, I had to self-harm myself to be around people that self-harm themselves. So I didn't have to feel like I was by myself. That's so backwards as a society, in my opinion. I digress. So let me digress. Let me just digress.
You said something really important, though.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's okay to hold space for that.
Yeah.
Honestly. That's real. And self-harm looks different for everybody.
And it's so funny because we don't even realize we're self-harming ourselves. We do it so unconsciously. Like for me, it was unconscious self-harm. I thought I was not harming myself, but the very thing that was actually causing harm, I had no idea it was until I stopped.
Mm-hmm.
I remember getting sober, and it was a charge by my pastor. He said, "No more drinking." I said, "No more Bud Lights." What do you mean? No more Bud Lights? He was like, ain't no deacon in my church gonna be drinking. I said, okay, all right. So I got sober. And then of course, you get around certain people. Let me have a drink. Man, I had a drink and it was the worst time. It was like my body physically was like, I'm like, this is bad. Like I smelt it. It stank. I remember going into bars and like the smell of alcohol just reeking through it seemed like the place was soaked in alcohol. Like from the food to the people to the chairs to the desk. Like I could smell the brewing and all. I was just like, it just made me feel sick once I stopped, And so, but here's the thing. I started to trade that vice for something else. So for me, I stopped drinking beer, but I gained like 400, it felt like 400 pounds because I was eating more cookies. I was eating more sweets. I was drinking the soda. I was, and that is another self-harm.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like we have to, because you get into depression eating. This is like more me as a health coach. You get into that. It's like now we're unhealthy eating. My health went up. My blood pressure went up. I gained 40 pounds. Being so I'm sober, but yet I'm eating like trash. So
was it the alcohol or is it something else?
It was something else. It was the depression. It was because I'm a self-isolator, and I've been dealing with depression, and it came back from childhood. Like growing up, being the only Black male in Midland, it felt like there's only 2 or 3 of us that I can identify with. My family's from the South at that, and we go into a corporate 97% white, predominantly Caucasian society. And there's nobody I identify with because when I'm at school, people, I'm talking like I talk to my parents and they don't understand what I'm saying. What did you say? Huh? What? Huh? And you have to matriculate into what their expectations of communication is, just to reach somebody, just to communicate with somebody that sounds like you. And so it was just those challenges. And it like Brittany, it rips you of your identity. Like you have to identify with as somebody else. But the only people that you have to rely on is your family. And then when your family's not, gelling, or like mom and dad work 9 to 5. They're not, they're working just to, keep lights on for you. And then your brothers and your sisters go off to college, and then you're just by yourself. And so I sat with a PlayStation in isolation, trying to figure life out. So that was it. So anyway, sorry, I gave a personal rant, I should say, but I believe it was very important for especially this topic and just kind of our root causing. And just to realize that we all can be put into having these risk factors. Tangibly, you're not by yourself. I'm guilty.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm so glad that you talked about being in white spaces, because Brittany, I know you identify with this, and I very much identify with growing up as one of the only Black kids in either the school, the class, whatever situation. And so how our identity is shaped, I think of like when you talked about like drinking in college, like all of us doing things in college that really were not who we were, because we felt and believed that in order to have connection and community, we have to mask. Mm-hmm. So we have to put on this mask of who our peer group in the world deems acceptable and good enough.
Whew, that hits. Especially it was tough. It was tough for me because everyone knew my parents, because my parents worked at the university. And so it was like, we don't do that. I was like, but I like to do that. No, we don't do that. Okay. We don't do that. And so I had to put on this, and nope, everything is great. Everything is fine. But it was definitely tough, and it was a lot of pressure.
Brittany, I identify with you as well because, I felt like I had a lot at stake. Mm-hmm. I'm a student athlete, president of the organization, the only iota on campus.
Yeah.
And so, but see, I had a personal, I had more of a status in my own mind. I was greater in my own mind than what I really was. And what I was doing, my mask was that, okay, publicly, you're the shot putter athlete guy who knows all of the athletes that go on to make ends in life, and you're in there, you're exercising all day long, you're doing all these things, and you have this mandate from the NCAA of conduct that you have to uphold. So if I, quote unquote, have this false sense of fun to identify with my friends, I have to do it in isolation. So the system itself created this monster for me. But I created this monster. You see what I mean? By my thinking. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it was sad because it's the thinking that I learned as a kid. Mm-hmm. It was growing up in society. It was outside influences. It was ignorance, things I didn't know. And I use the word ignorant because it's the perfect word for the situation. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what ignorant means.
I don't know.
But not know.
Just don't know.
Yeah.
So it's so innocent. There's innocence in being ignorant, but it's not good.
No.
Yeah.
So we have to, oh my God, I feel so charged. We have to, this is what this is about. This is why we're meeting. We're meeting here because we want to get rid of the ignorance of our society. Alcohol and all that stuff is socially good when you're responsible, but it's really a self-harming tool because it gets abused, just like candy, cake, anything that we overdo So we have to stay in a healthy mental state. But my question is how? And so
Well,
that's a perfect transition. We need some practices. What
yeah.
can we do to keep ourselves like healthy in that state and keep these?
I
Yeah.
mean, I think it's complex. I apologize. Not really. I'm not really sorry. It's complicated. It's really complicated, right? We are up against a lot of different things. Like we touched on, right? Like identity struggle. We talk about like some is just like growing pains. Like this is a part of life. Life is not easy. We have trials, tribulations, struggles, things, um real experiences of racism, sexism, right? And then like a disruption of connection and connection to community. And so right, like we talk about like college, right, and these kind of unhealthy things, but at the end of the day we had community and we had each other. And I know so many, even in our imperfection of how we support each other and showed up for each other, I know that there are so many people after graduating undergrad, if they didn't stay connected or if they didn't go to grad school, really struggled not having that social connection. So it's also like life phases and like transitions, I think about it. But like talking about it from like a prevention standpoint. So it's again knowing the warning signs,
Mhm.
understanding, right? People don't seek help because of a lot of different reasons, right? Like they have created their own their own coping, that is how they survive, period. So like I think about like my uncle, and I was telling him about therapy and trying to convince my family to go, and he's like, I don't need therapy. You don't need therapy. There's nothing wrong with you. Like there's nothing that this Budweiser can't fix for me. Like, like I will drink, I will numb, because numbing is a viable coping mechanism. Maybe isn't the best, but it damn sure gets you through hard times. It damn sure, I will tell you this, helps me survive being at home in Big Rapids sometimes with the stress of family things, is if, and not even like numbing with a substance, but just numbing, shutting down any sort of emotion so I could just get through this robot
Mhm.
autopilot. Sometimes that's necessary, but again, within reason. People, like you said, Mike, like are ignorant, so they really don't know that they need help. They don't think that they need help or that help is available. They think they're the ones that knows how to take care of themselves and what they need and what's best. um like racism is real, white supremacy is real. It's ingrained and embedded and rooted in our society, in this world. And I don't remember growing up learning the things that we learned in school, which was very much whitewashed. I don't remember learning about wellness practices and self-care and community building
Nope.
and like collective support. And so like if you are poor, which I will say I come from a poor family. I just, like where I'm at in my world, my family is like, oh, she's amazing. Her life is awesome. Like she ain't got no troubles. My cousin calls me the golden child. He said, you know how to talk that proper talk and fit in with the white people. And like whatever you struggled with, it wasn't that bad. And I was like, okay, that's fine.
Mm.
So like that, right? That disconnection of like, yeah, you're right. We didn't have the same struggles, but anyway, I lost my train of thought because I went off. Forgive me. So let
This
me
is this is so good. No,
roll
no,
this
this is so
back.
good. This is why we
Oh,
have this conversation.
yeah, collective and community healing. So like, how do we fix this, or how do we prevent this? Like, y'all know I told you in previous conversations, I'm a go there. Like the structural system in which we live in, like the three of us are not actually supposed to be having this conversation, period. Like the three of us weren't supposed to go to college, period. and so on and so forth. That is different, clearly from family and the way that life happened and divine guidance. But structurally, systemically within this nation, that wasn't set up for us. Like that wasn't a thing. So for us to be in these positions, we're experiencing a lot of that. And there's been a lot of loss of like culture and tradition. But coming back to like the point of it is like, how do we intervene or support someone who's struggling? Is like we have to rebuild our communities. Like we have to rebuild our community connections. We have to find our empathy, right? We have to find our like service, like conviction to serve each other, to support each other. And like that starts with just like, right, Mike, you are a father to a son. That starts with like being empathetic and actively listening to your son and showing him respect and that he can trust you and that you're going to support him.
Yeah.
Right? That's about being non-judgmental, about being transparent. Like I think of like the little me who created this identity that she had to be perfect in order to be lovable. She had to be perfect in order to be accepted and all these things. Like that was never what my mother said in her like raising of me, but that's what I took from it. And then I also took like my emotions are not important. What I need is not okay. I'm not allowed to express any other emotion, period. So like that's never anything my mother ever said, but that is how I interpreted things, and that is how I survived. It's like doing those things. So like, right, like us as humans being transparent about our struggles and our battles with the people that we love, collaborating with each other. Like I think of friends that like I have overwhelmingly like cried and like racked myself over and over in criticism because I wasn't able to show up for them in the ways that they needed, expected, or wanted my support. But also kind of thinking about like my boundaries and like, if I'm there for this person off the cliff, I'm off the cliff too. And like, I got stuff I'm holding back. I got stuff I'm trying to navigate. And so like that balance of like, we can't be all things to all people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So like we need each other. Like it's not 1, 2, 3, but we might have to start there. So I would say like collaborating. I would also say like if you're invested in this, truly like go get a training. Get a training on how to respond to crises. Go volunteer, I took like it's an applied suicide intervention like strategy training when I was in grad school. And I'm telling you, like this was set up for everybody. This was not just for clinicians. And it really emphasized like ask people move like, you shouldn't ask that, but like don't be like, you're not thinking about killing yourself. No, just ask like, are you thinking about killing yourself? Are you having thoughts? Like, don't be afraid to lean in and ask. And a lot of times we are because we don't want to mess it up. Well, damn it, how are you going to learn if you don't make mistakes? Like, that's another thing. Like, yeah, you might mess it up. Prayerfully, you don't mess it up so bad that person never wants to speak to you again. But like, we have to be willing to step into that space. And sometimes that means like owning your own shit and owning like your own stuff that you're hiding and being willing to be vulnerable. So I want to, because I could keep going.
This is why I brought you on here, because you are passionate about this.
Yeah.
Because you see that you see how it flows into the end game, like the end result of people numbing, the end result of people going into severe isolation. There's a story that I want to kind of share is I remember having lunch with my best friend. I don't know, people don't know this, but my best friend died. I don't know how he died, but I know he passed away. But before he passed away, we had a conversation. He said, Mike, and this is how it looked. So innocent. He's like, I've seen everything. I've done everything. I've been all around the world. I've been to all of these places. What else is next for me?
Mhm.
Chilling.
Yeah.
What else do I have to live for? Is what he asked. And I was like, at that point, as a friend, I said, huh. I actually was there with like I the empathy was, I don't know if I was empathetic or I was sympathetic or I was just kind of in collusion because I couldn't say anything. I was just like, yeah, I mean, this is a friend of mine that I looked up to. You know what I mean? Like because my brother went to college, because my parents worked so hard to just provide for us, and I'm the big brother. But this was like somebody in my life that I really looked up to. I saw as successful. I saw as very smart. You know what I mean? So it was so personal for me, and it was almost like in that moment I didn't know what to say.
Okay.
Like I froze. Like, what do you say to that? But I didn't know that was like he's thinking about ending it.
Mm-hmm.
And we had that conversation. It's like I'm thinking about but he had that conversation with not just me but other friends, and it didn't come out until after.
Yeah.
Until after the fact.
And that's something that I forgot to mention too. Like I said, like they'll say something, but oftentimes they'll let multiple people know as well.
Yeah.
And some of the stigma around a person who's experiencing suicidal ideation is like they're doing it for attention.
Mm.
Yeah. I'm gonna drop it. Pay the fuck attention to me. Hey, and so when you were talking about that, and it wasn't a criticism, my thought was reflecting on myself too, is like, were you present when you were with your friend? So I find myself not being present always, and that's where you miss stuff. You're just going along, going through the motion, and this was a very clear indication. Now, in hindsight,
Yeah.
in that moment, it was just kind of like, oh, that's different.
Yeah.
And Brittany, please, interject if you have other thoughts. But like, also sometimes once people really decide, it's done.
Yep.
It's final. Like the other times, the attempts or the reaching out, those are the like tests.
Yeah.
How far can I get to that ledge? And then that's like, and that's a really sucky part. And that's why that's why I always come back to community. Like,
Yeah.
and this is way off, but it just made me think about in Japan, culturally, it is seen as, I had someone share a story with me of a man who, and I can't get it all right, but like essentially was required to go like cut down either cut down something that had died. I don't know if it was a person or if it was an animal, but it was something pretty horrific. And like in Japanese culture, it's better to put society and above yourself and family than talk about your own issue. So like if you have an issue, you should go talk to all the other women in the community before you share like what your problem is, and then see if you have a problem. So it was this person couldn't talk to anybody about the horrific thing that they were asked to do. So they went out and killed themselves. And that was seen as better than, dishonoring the family or breaking this cultural expectation of how you're to be. So like that thing between Western society too, of like suicide, it's another day conversation. But just coming back to overall, like how community is important. And sometimes with this, the reality is like once they've made their mind up, there's not much that can change it aside from a divine intervention, a miracle.
Yeah. So I kind of want to pivot.
Yeah.
I want to pivot because I think this is a perfect opportunity for us to look at our healthcare delivery system.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's look at it in hotlines. like, we get numbers. I know there's a hotline that has text messages. I know there's a hotline that you can reach out to, the suicide hotline, you have EAP at work. We have resources. I'll tell you my personal experience when I went to the EAP, it put me through too many steps. If I'm thinking about committing suicide and I need someone right now in this moment, I don't need to be put on an automatic thing. I want to talk to somebody now. I need someone to talk to. So that was just me reaching out, wanting counseling, right? And just with so many steps, I never ended up even seeing the counselor. So what would you say to that? Because that is my experience. Brittany, I know you've had an experience. I kind of want you to elaborate on your experiences with hotlines, getting in the hospital. And so maybe we can kind of shed some light on that. And then I want you to think about, and this is for anybody watching this video, think about what could be done to improve that. What can we do as a healthcare entity and as a community to improve on our delivery and our accessibility for people who are dealing with this? So Brittany, I want you to elaborate on your experience.
Okay, let me pick the phone up. Let me pick the phone up. So my experience was terrible, and I'm just going to be honest and put that out there. I had a very terrible experience, and it occurred more than one time. So for me, like once you're in recovery, you're kind of always in recovery. It's not really that the thoughts go away completely, because when you're in similar situations and I really don't like the word triggered, but when you're something else comes up, it's just like, okay. But in reaching out for help, everything, the system is flawed. I've been hospitalized twice. The first time I went to the hospital, I was at, like I said before, I chose life. I went to the police station and they put me on the back in a cell, in a holding cell. It didn't have bars, but it was like a holding room, like an interrogation room. There was a table, and the officer comes in and is like asking me all these questions. And they were like, are you gonna hurt somebody? Are you gonna? And I was like, no, I just myself. Like, I'm not, And they were pressing and pressing and pressing. And so they're like, well, we're gonna, send you. They sent me to a hospital. I had been drinking, so we did a detox in the hospital, and then they shipped me to another city. And when you walk in and you're thinking about hurting yourself and all these things, and they're like, I need a second. 1 second, guys. Hold on.
Yep.
As we're waiting, I think
Yeah.
the criminalization of Black folks, period.
Yeah. They put her in a holding cell.
Yeah. And I mean, like, that's unfortunately not
crazy.
uncommon. I just can't believe that I'm having a hard time, stages of grief or technically death and dying, right? Denial. I'm having a hard time accepting that is something that happened, right? To someone that I know. However, that is exactly what happens. And so thinking about like suicide and like how to get help and what's a part of the issue is I'm always going to come back to, especially for as they say, historically marginalized or Black and brown folks, right? It's the policing of us, the policing of our existence. We are constantly in survival, fight or flight, freeze, whatever, appease, submit mode of, and like it's in our DNA, right? Like us existing freely is a
Yeah.
crime.
Yeah. We have to be 100 times stronger than what we need to be.
Right.
It's sick.
Yeah.
It's sickening how hard we have to, how strong we really have to be.
Mm-hmm.
And realizing that it's how weak we really have to be. Like, you see what I mean? Like, we have to be so weak in society that we have to be 100%, 100 times stronger just to overcome some of the obstacles that we have. And, you know, this is hard. This is a hard conversation.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we can get into racial profiling from this. There's so many different, you know, ways we can go from here.
Khalif Browder, correct me if I'm wrong, died by suicide.
Who's this?
He, it was either New York or New Jersey. He was a young man who was detained by the police for under suspicion of, and if I get his name wrong, I'm gonna be upset. Yeah, so in the Bronx, New York, he was held at Rikers Island without trial from 2010 to 2013 for allegedly stealing a backpack containing valuables. He was held in solitary confinement for 700 days. He was 16 when this happened. And he was held in solitary confinement because he refused to plead guilty to a crime he didn't commit. And he hanged himself